This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. Welcome to A Life in Film. I'm Elliot James Langridge. I'm an actor, writer, and apparently a podcaster, and I love film. This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? Previous guests include Andrea Riseborough, Natalie Emmanuel, Phil Dunster, Scott Adkins, and David Jesse, to name a few. He's a former boy wizard, and now he's part of the world of Bridgerton in Netflix's smash hit, Queen Charlotte. We chat about that and also who influenced him early on. We reminisce of the time working together on Netflix's The War Below, the ups and downs of being in a Haribo commercial, and what to do if you get a nosebleed mid-performance on Broadway. Our guest today is actor Sam Clemmett.
It's a life in film. 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 Woo!
Hello, darling.
Hello.
There she is. Anyway, darling, should we get down to you?
Let's talk about me.
Lovely. I'll just explain for the audience that we did record something 2 years ago. It was
We did.
awful. Not your part.
I was the test. I was the dummy.
You were grand though. Everything your end was all good. All the stories, everything else. I was terrible. So out of vanity, I've banished it. And we'll never be releasing it, which you always gave me shit for. You're like, are you ever going to release this episode? And I was like, no, I will.
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
took
not.
so much time
no,
out
not.
today. No, you're definitely not.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you shouldn't.
No. Okay, so just to give you a bit of background for the audience, but let's start with some quick fire questions. The fear in
Okay.
Sam's eyes. He's like, oh God. Oh God.
I had some quick fire questions the other day and I immediately felt ill.
Just don't think, just answer them as quickly as you can. Right, okay. What is the first influential film you can remember seeing? Something that really affected you?
No Country for Old Men. And it is still now one of my favourite films of all time.
Absolute banger. The haircut alone is worth the admission.
I mean, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's unrecognizable in it as well. So
Truly.
what, like, everyone's a stander or a walker when they go up the escalators in London, right? I get really annoyed when I'm going up and I have to run up because the people stop in front of you and I can't stand slow walking people or people that just stop. Are you a walker or are you a stander?
80% of the time I'm a walker because I can't stand still. I've struggled to just stay in one place.
You got somewhere to go, that's why.
Always. Oh, I mean, if I'm on the tube, I really do have somewhere to go, and I don't go out as much as I used to before the pandemic. So yeah, I tend to be more of a walker than a stander.
Now, answer this one really quickly. Don't even think about it. What's the worst thing you've ever had in your mouth?
The worst thing I've ever had in my mouth, an off yogurt.
Oh no.
Which, like, I put it in my mouth and it was fizzy and almost felt furry, and I was like, wow. And then it needed to come out of my mouth. So yes, that's what sprung to mind. I'm sure I've had worse things, but that's pretty.
Yeah, that's
horrendous.
pretty rough. I've done the whole thing where I used to, as a kid, used to drink milk from the carton. My mum was like, stop drinking it from the carton. And then one day I stopped because I picked up the carton and I just went glug, 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 and I realised it was lumpy and thick. And it was off.
It's
Never
the
did it
same
again.
premise. Don't put off dairy stuff in your body, in your mouth.
No,
It's horrendous.
It's not good. What are you most afraid of?
Oh, what am I most afraid of? I mean, spiders are up there. I am terrified of spiders. They have their place, don't get me wrong, and I will always get them out of the house. But they do terrify me. Yeah, spiders.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not great with spiders. I went to South Africa recently, and I was always like thinking, oh, and I'd always check the toilet around the toilets, and then because they get inside the bowl and stuff. Still to this day, that's something that I always do. But I never found one, so I think that might have been someone that was like pulling my leg a
There's
little bit.
plenty of quite dangerous wildlife in South Africa, so
Yeah, it's a reason I've never
finding
been to Sydney, or not Sydney, but Australia,
Australia.
because
Right.
that everything there wants to kill you. Last last question. What is your earliest memory, something that you can kind of tangibly remember as a kid, like, and you think it was probably the earliest sort of thought that you had?
Earliest memory when I can be a kid. I have such a vivid memory, and it must be one of the first memories of we had this blue and yellow slide in our back garden in Norfolk, where my family home was, or it still is. And I just remember going up and down, up and down, up and down constantly. And I was obsessed with slides as a kid. So yeah, that's definitely one of my earliest memories.
Mm. It's funny, isn't it, how things like that, when you're a kid, you probably thought the slide was huge, or like,
Totally.
and then you see it now and you're like, oh, that's not very
Yeah,
good. Why did
the
I go
six steps
dancing?
that it took to get up, the 6 steps that I took to get up was like climbing a mountain for a 3 or 4 year old.
And the biggest question, obviously, that we will, lead us on to the rest of the podcast. What was the first sort of initial thing that got you on the acting train, the thing that hooked you and made you want to become an actor and pursue that as a serious career?
Oh, I think the moment the moment that made me really consider pursuing it as a serious career, because I really loved it. I started around the age of like 10 or 11 at this theatre course back in Norwich. But I think the moment I considered being able to do it professionally was when I joined the National Youth Theatre, and you do this like 2 week almost like initiation course. It's not an initiation course. I don't quite know another word for it, but it's this 2 week course, crash course in theatre and acting and music, drama, improvisation. You cover all these different things, and every single day you have these practitioners of theatre and film which work professionally in the industry, and they come in and work on one area of the arts. And at the end of them 2 weeks, I was like, wow, people actually do this for a living and make a comfortable living out of this. So I think that was a real turning point for me.
Mm. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of, obviously that is a big thing. Was there anyone in your family or anyone close friends that really is there anyone else that you're related to, or kind of impacted you as a young kid, that was already involved in the industry? Kind of anyone that kind of influenced you in a way?
Yeah, I mean, no one in my family is in the arts. My mum danced a lot as a kid, and I think she had aspirations to go on and do dancing, but never did. Um, so that's one. I suppose that's the only link in the family, possibly. But there was a tutor of mine at the local theatre course that I went to in Norwich, and her name is Michelle Montague, and we still have a really close relationship now, and I'm indebted to her. She's someone that from day dot there really backed me and believed in me, I suppose. And she was the person, I think, that gave me confidence and really pushed me, not just within the arts, but as a person, because I lacked a lot of confidence, and I was quite shy when I was younger. So she's the one that's always fought my corner and stood by me, and I mean, she really has taught me everything I know. She trained as an actress at Lambda, and then never actually pursued acting fully, but is the most amazing and supportive tutor, and still works within Norwich in the same within the same realm, I suppose. Yeah, definitely Michelle is who I would say has been my rock since day dot.
Shout out to Michelle. Yeah, it can either be one or
Yes.
the other, can't it? Because I know that, well, we've had a few guests on here that you know, they either were told at school like, oh, don't pursue it, don't bother, there's no point, it's too hard, or you know, you're not good enough, or whatever. And it's either you go fuck you, and then that gives you the drive, or you've got someone like Michelle where they're there and they've supported you, they've nurtured you. Either way, it's like it kind of sets that fire.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There was still plenty of that at school, and you know, there's plenty. Even when I go back to Norfolk now, even though I've got this show, they still go, "But what's Plan B if it doesn't work out?" And I'm like, "Well, it's working out currently, and I don't now really have one, so I'm going to stop you there."
Oh mate, it doesn't matter what you do or what you've done, who you work with, anything that you achieve, especially in the film industry. I think a lot of people that are kind of separate from it, and they go to the cinema once a year or whatever.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who you've worked with or any of those people, because I know that, like, I used to do gardening jobs on the side when I was in between work, and I used to do it with my mate's dad, and he was always like, oh, how's it going? Well, obviously you're here, so can't, you need the money,
Yeah,
obviously, so you can't be going that one kind of thing. But he was always
yeah.
very nice about it. But then I did a job with Gary Oldman, and I thought, oh, this, I can be like, look, Ian, I just did a movie with Gary Oldman. He was like, who's Gary who? And I was just
Wow,
like, wow, it
wow.
just doesn't matter. It
No, it
doesn't
doesn't.
matter.
I tell
Like,
you when
you'll
it would
never impress
matter.
them.
If you're in like maybe like something like a soap, which is just soaked up by so much of the of society, and that's something that's really recognizable and is like a
Mm.
consistent in their day to day. Films aren't a consistent in people's lives, um, but something like a soap opera is, and I think then they're like, well, now you've made it. Do you know what I mean?
That's very true. Yeah. Yeah. I had a
And I don't
neighbor
know
who was
what
always like, do EastEnders. If you can get on EastEnders. And I was like,
I don't know what that is. Not that there's not this is no shade to soaps and the likes of EastEnders, but it's you'd think that something like the film industry would take precedent over something like a continual drama, but in their lives, because going to the cinema might be a treat, it might be the one thing to do once a month or maybe once a year. Whereas
mhm.
I think it's the fact that that's such a consistent in their lives, where it's like, well, we see you every day on the telly, so you're doing really well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be being received by people consistently to, I suppose, for them, and I'm talking about the people in back from where I'm from in Norfolk that still say to me, "What's Plan B?" For
Mhm.
them to go, "Well, you don't need a Plan B now." I don't know.
It's that awkward thing though. I find that I went to a wedding last weekend, and it's always like, oh, you're an actor, and I dread having to sort of say it, because
I
it
know.
still feels the same as it did when I started, and I was essentially on a gap here, and I was trying to get into short films and stuff. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm an actor, and then they're like, oh, what have you been in? And then
Oh,
you
I
feel like
know.
you can't win, because either you're
No.
showing off or you're not in anything, and it's like there's no sort of
Yeah.
yeah. And usually when you say the big thing you've done, they go,
Totally, totally. I still end up like if I'm with a friend of mine who's very close to me, they'll go, "Who's in the Haribo commercial?" And they go, "Oh, I remember you now." And I'm like, "For God's sake, I don't care about that."
I love that you brought that up, because I'd forgotten about that, and I'm gonna hunt that down.
Great movie.
Yeah, it was sick. Haribo fantastic. Tangy.
This has been great, Elliot. So I'm going to log off now. All
You're
right.
like, beep.
Bye, love.
Oh God, I forgot about that. Well, yeah, I think we had it when we were, to explain to the audience, we did a film together called The Wall Below. I think it's a great little film. I think it's very well done, and I think John did a great job with the budget he had. World War Two, World War One.
World War
World War
One.
One.
Oh, that's awkward.
World War One movie. Just cut around that. It's a World War One movie. And yeah, great. We played brothers. But a few people that watched it were confused whether or not we were lovers or brothers.
Yeah.
So
Who
that's
knows?
awkward. But
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why I brought. Why was I bringing that? Oh yeah, I was saying that your Haribo advert came to light midway through filming, and that was joyous.
As it always does, any job I ever do, someone suddenly remembers, or if I'm out and I bring in someone from like a different friendship group and they want to throw me under the bus, always comes up. It comes back to haunt me.
Don't you worry, mate. I did Pringles, and that was just as painful.
Careful. Pringles are bursting with flavor. Pringles, bursting with flavor.
But, you know, at least you get paid. Well, you got paid well back in those days for it. I don't know if you would now, but the money was very welcome at the time. I was selling furniture that I was in my flat I was living in. I was selling things because I had no money to pay the mortgage. And then I got that, and I was like, actually, it doesn't matter how much shit I get for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's well worth it.
It's making my life so much easier.
Exactly. For that space of time, and then for the rest of your life, nightmare. But
nightmare.
So let's talk a little bit about, obviously it has to come up to the cursed child, and that for you, I mean, I'm guessing that was we've had, just to remind the audience, we have had this conversation before, but genuinely I can't remember the answers to this. So I am essentially listening to this for the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, was it a normal kind of audition process? How did that come about?
No, I wouldn't say it's well, I mean, there's elements of it that were very normal, but there was also things about it that were incredibly unique. So I will try not to make this too long, but I initially got a meeting from my agent for it. I think it was like June or July of 2015, beginning of the summer that year. And he was like, I don't have any information on it. We know that they're doing a play called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and they want you to read sides from the Chamber of Secrets film. You're going to go in and meet the casting director, who was Julia Horan and her associate, Lottie Hines. They're both brilliant. And I went in and I met Lottie, and we literally read through the 2 or 3 scenes, maybe twice each. And she went, "That's great. See you soon." And I was like, well, I'm never hearing from that again, because this just feels like you are, I don't know, pissing into the wind, for the want of a better phrase. And then I think it must have been a couple of weeks later, they're like, we've got a recall. Lottie really liked you. You wanted to meet John Tiffany, our brilliant director. So I went in and met John. And again, it was the same set of sides. And he steered me in a slightly different direction. And I asked him some questions. And he's like, I can't say anything. But just imagine this part is somewhat bigger and better than Harry. Well, that's not helpful, but okay. And then things really started to move quicker. I then had a movement workshop with Stephen Hoggart, who's the choreographer and movement director of the show. And that was like a 3-hour workshop. And after that, they offered me the final workshop, because any play that you do a lot of research and development, you do a lot of workshops before it goes into the full rehearsal process. And that workshop lasted a month, and they wanted me to do the last 2 weeks. And I didn't realize at the time, but at the end of them 2 weeks of the workshop, we were going to do a full reading to all the execs. But I wasn't going to be present for that. So I had to do the first week of the workshop. So I was like, well, I've now shot myself in the foot, because I can't do the last 2 weeks. No one's going to see me, because I was doing another job at the time, and I was only doing like 3 scenes in this other play.
Oh man.
Well, yeah, I know. So I was like, well, I'll just do the 1 week, and I put my all into the week. And at the end of it, John brought me aside, and we did what was called the blanket scene, and that's where Harry and Albus have a fallout at the beginning of the play, and that's the moment where everything really the story starts to move forward, I suppose, and that's the essence of what the story is. And he filmed it. They filmed it for Sonia and Colin, our producers, and the whole team. And then literally the weekend after they finished the workshop, I got a call on the Monday from my agent and said, so they've offered it to you. And that was after like 4 months of going back and forth with rehearsals, not really knowing what the part is. And he called me, and I was on lunch doing this play, and I wanted to be able to tell everybody. I wanted to be able to shout it from the rooftops, but you can't say anything, to the point where my agent went, but I don't know what role they've offered you because they won't tell me.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how it all came about, and then you go through the long negotiation process for the contract, and then it was like 6 months until we started. So that was the process.
Do you, and obviously you've recorded it there pretty in detail, but do you remember the moment when you got that phone call?
Yeah, I remember what I was doing. I remember where I was. So I was rehearsing a play at Stratford at the RSC. We were doing Wendy and Peter Pan, and the rehearsal studios are like 15-minute walk from our places because you all stay in Stratford. So I was like that day, you know what? I don't really fancy the lunch that's being provided today. So I went back and I was literally making myself a ham sandwich in the kitchen. And one of the other flatmates was there, and my agent called and said, "Are you on your own?" I was like, "No, do I need to be?" He said, "Yeah." Okay. So I
Were
took
you
my.
like, this has got to be good, surely, or is it
Oh, I
really
was like,
bad?
well, nothing really clicked in my head because I was on such a short time scale to be able to eat my lunch and get back to work. I wasn't really thinking anything of it. So I went to my room and went, right, I'm in my room. What's going on? Is everything okay? And he went, yeah, no. And how's rehearsals going? And he was being really coy. And I was like, Charlie, I've got to go back to work. What do you want to say? And he went, well, they've offered you Harry Potter. And I lost my mind. Um, I remember that I'd just done laundry and there was laundry in the center of the room. I only had one little window in the room, so there wasn't much light. I was just pacing up and down. I mean, it's such a vivid memory in that moment. And then I called my dad, and he was on the M6 driving because he did a lot of driving for work. And I told him, and he got very emotional. Then I called mum, and she was at the office where she works. She was like, oh, hi, everyone's at work. I can't do anything. That's amazing. And then I called my brother and went, oh, that's good. Do you want to be more excited? Yeah, it's great. I'm playing a game on the Xbox. Can you call me back? And then had no time to eat my lunch. Then I went back to work and couldn't tell a soul.
That must have been hard going back to then sort of try and focus on something completely different.
It was almost impossible. I clung on, I think, for about 2 weeks before I think it was about 2, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was 2 days or 2 hours. But the first person I told was now one of my closest friends, Cav, and I was like, I have to tell somebody because I cannot keep this in. But I've just been given this job, and I think I need to go for a drink and like unwind or celebrate or something. And then that's the only person other than my family that knew for such a long time.
Wow. So did you weren't able to tell anyone that whole? So I get, because I kind of remember when it was all going on, and there was a shroud of secrecy over who was cast and everything, and then there was obviously a big announcement. What was that? Yeah, was it the 6 months of rehearsals the whole time? You're not allowed to tell anyone.
Yeah, you couldn't tell anyone because, and I really admire the producers for this because the when we were rehearsing the play, they had just announced that Jamie, Paul, and Noma were playing Harry, Ron, Hermione, but they said we're not going to announce anyone else because there's so much noise from the brilliant fandom that, as exciting as that is, there's 10 weeks of a lot of really hard work to do, and then there's the build up of tech rehearsals, and that can be really distracting and quite overwhelming to deal with. So we had like the 15 weeks of rehearsals, including the tech, and it kind of felt like we were just rehearsing any other play. And so I really admire them for not announcing anything until we literally started the first set of previews, because that just allowed us to turn up to work and not have any of that outside noise, as it were, and do the job and create the play.
I remember when I first met you on the train on the way up to go film The Wall Below, and I remember having a conversation and being, oh yeah, I saw it, I love the cash out, and then kind of came to me, I was like, I don't remember you though. And it was because the one time you'd had like, what was it, a couple of days off? Because
we were allowed like 2 or 3 weeks off work, and you could book it in advance. And it got to October, and it was around my birthday, and we'd finished rehearsing understudies, and all the tracks were dealt with. And I took the first week off that I could, and that was my first week off since February of that year. And that happened to be the one I came to.
I was like, he wasn't even there when I went to see it.
Didn't bother showing up. He was in the south of Spain sunning himself.
It's one of those plays that I love going to the theatre and everything else, but I do something like that, which is such a huge spectacle. So fun. I mean, anyone that hasn't seen it obviously isn't a fan of Harry Potter, because by now you should have probably gone to
I
see
mean,
it.
if you love theatre, if you love Harry Potter,
Mm.
you love stories in general, even if you go to the theatre like only 2-3 times a year, chances are you would have seen it. But
Mm.
it's still pulling in audiences far and wide around the world.
And you obviously you went on to do it in Broadway as well.
Yes, we did. So we did it for 15 months in London, and then we had like 6 months off, which was, sorting out the next contract and finding places to live in New York. And then yeah, we moved to New York for 15 months.
Mm. What an amazing job. So what was the whole, my math's terrible. What was the whole span from beginning to end, like start of rehearsals to the finishing of the final product in Broadway? How long were you actually doing it for?
So we started rehearsals. I think I've got the 16th of February in my head of 2016, and we finished, I believe it was April of 2019.
Oh,
So,
that's pretty fair.
but
Fair on them.
it was about just over 3 years, including the like 6 months that we had off between London and New York. But
Yeah.
it was essentially 15 months in both places. So
Yeah.
yeah,
As
it was not.
incredible as that job is, was that, because that's a long time to do anything the same thing. Did it ever become monotonous, or was it always, I mean, it's such an incredible thing to be a part of.
Yeah, anyone would be lying, doing a long run, you going, is there any point that you found it, maybe monotonous isn't the right word, but exhausting, and trying to keep it fresh and uh spontaneous, and being in the moment every single day when you've been saying the lines for 2.5 years and you've still got 6 months left. It's hard. Like it's just a completely different discipline, I suppose.
Mm.
We were just very lucky to have a company of incredibly talented actors, and that's the entire company, because there's always people coming in and out of tracks and understudies coming on that was so good and cast so damn well that made it easy whenever you felt yourself slipping into autopilot or turned up going, I'm so tired, I really don't want to do this today. That fresh energy really helped.
I remember you telling me a story about a issue that happened while you were doing the scene where you're in the tank
Oh
in the water.
God.
If you'd be
Oh,
willing to share that on with us.
yeah. Oh God. So
Was this towards the end of the run, or was this kind of, where was this?
this was like, I believe, middle of the run in New York. So we'd been going for
Oh,
like
right, okay.
4 or 5 months, and I've always, like, as a kid, suffered with nosebleeds, and they'd come and go throughout my life. They flare up and they flare down, all that stuff. So, and for some reason, they were flaring up again in New York. And yeah, there's this moment in the show, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone that hasn't seen it, but it's set in the lake at one point, and we have this tank of water, and I'm suddenly a big surprise, and I come out. Anyway, uh, my nose was reacting in a way. I don't know whether it's the pressure being underwater, but every time I came out, for about 2 weeks, 9 times out of 10, my nose was bleeding. And the first time it happened, I came out, and Anto, who was playing Scorpius at the time, looked at me going, "Oh, Albus, Albus!" And anyone that's listening, I'm rubbing my nose because that's what he was. Or he was rubbing his nose. And I was going, "That's a weird choice. What are you doing?" And then realised that my nose was bleeding, and that was going on for weeks. And then you've got, because we could see people on the front row, and they're looking at you going, wow, this guy's really going for it. Is that meant to be happening? Is he meant to be bleeding from his face? And so that was then happening consistently for about 2 weeks, and it was really humiliating and embarrassing, and filled me with anxiety every time I got to that scene, because I was like, I need to run off stage. I've got the quickest change in the world. I need to try and stop my nose bleeding before getting on to the next scene. And it took me having to have a weekend off, and they cauterized my nose and got rid of what was going on. But yeah,
Wow.
that's one of my more embarrassing moments from showbiz, I suppose.
That must have been such a weird thing. Like, you must have been like faint if it was happening that often. You must have been just like losing so much blood every night, especially
Yeah,
when you're in the water. Like it's.
it really did get to that point. I don't know why they flared up, but they did, and I was like, this needs to be dealt with. I can't keep doing this show like this. So I had the process of cauterizing your nose. I don't know if you know what that's like, but it's basically
No. Do they burn it? Like,
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
This thing looks. They don't set anything on fire. The doctor cut the end off this stick, which I suppose looks like an incense burner, and touches the inside of your nose where the blood vessels are, and it basically corrodes the vessel and brings it down. So yeah, it's quite a weird sensation.
Lovely, darling.
Yeah,
I have to move.
Everyone's welcome for that story.
We'll get some sort of picture to illustrate what that looks like.
Fantastic.
So moving on to, obviously, at the point where you got the cursed child, I mean, looking at your credits, you've obviously been working and stuff, but that is a huge step up. Like that is I mean, for any actor, that job is monumental. What was that shift like in terms of actually, working continually, actually having money in your bank and not having to worry about what was coming next? Was that all a bit overwhelming, or did you take it in your stride at the time? You must have been fairly young as well.
Yeah, I was. I think I was 22 when I got the job, maybe 21. I can't quite remember how old I was then. It was around 21, 22. But yeah, I mean, I defy anyone to, and it was the same experience with the show that I've just done. Moving into a world that's got such a huge fandom and that is so hugely popular, and these stories and these characters mean so much to people. I defy anyone to not be overwhelmed, and of course I was excited and honored as an actor to be able to do this opportunity, but I was also terrified. And imposter syndrome comes in. It's kind of like, oh god, they're going to find me out because I've only been doing like these smaller roles, or an episode of something here and there. I've not done something for a long period of time, and you're literally one of 3 people that are telling the story of the show, that the audience see the story through the eyes of this character. So yeah, it was very overwhelming, and I think I only started to take it in my stride in New York, because London was such a whirlwind. And I know that even though we had such a long rehearsal process, because of the scale of the show, all 7 of us principals felt like we had unfinished business with the show. So when we got to New York, and I felt more grounded and confident, I suppose, within our roles in the story, and being confident in a room with all the creatives, because like the job is ours, I'm not going to get fired now. I was able to really take things more in my stride then, and I suppose take that step into the next part of my career, which is like, as you've said, there's more opportunities available to you, because that's just how it works. When the more you do, the more opportunities become available to you, because you're more in people's eye lines, I suppose. Yeah, but it is a very, very overwhelming process, and it took me a good 15 to 20 months before I was able to really ground myself and take it in my stride.
Well, from that overwhelming feeling, I'm sure that when the show came to an end and you were like, man, what? I've got to find a job now.
Oh my
Suddenly
god!
being out of work after 3 years plus 3+ years,
Dude,
what was that like mentally? Did you have to kind of, I don't know, you must have had to get a hobby or something to keep yourself kind of sane.
It was terrifying, like, because none of the 7 of us, working with people that have worked consistently for so long, all of us were in a position of, what the fuck are we going to do? I haven't done this for so long. The idea of like auditioning is, I think, is a very nerve-wracking process for anybody, no matter how good or bad you are at it. So, and I remember finishing in New York, our visas were running out, and we had to go back to the UK. And because I hadn't had a flat in London for a while, I went back to my family home for a couple of weeks before moving back to London. And at that point, in what was my room had become the spare room, was a single bed, and the single bed that I'd grown up in. So I got back from New York, and I've been on this Broadway adventure, and I tucked myself in this single bed with no room, and I went, did any of that just happen? I've never forgotten that moment.
Yeah.
And then it was, there was loads of opportunities in terms of taping, so that was really exciting. But also moving into the world of TV and film, which works slightly differently. So I was still trying to find my feet with that, and with that comes a lot of, opening yourself up to really relearning stuff and understanding how self-taping works, because we were really moving into the world of taping and meeting in person less and less. But luckily enough, after it can't have been any more than 2 months, and I think it was less than 2 months, I suddenly got The War Below. So it
Oh,
wasn't.
well, was it that soon after?
Yeah, it did. It wasn't too long, and I was like, "Well, this has gone very well. Happy days. The cat that got the cream." And then yeah, we started shooting that for what 6 weeks or whatever it was.
Wow, yeah, that is mad. That's a tough one, isn't it? For any actors that are out there, was oh, but you had a job, it's great, but like the come down sometimes of having something where you've been working on it, you've done all this work on it, and everything's focused on that. When you're on it, you don't really think past that, and if you do, it's always like, what's the next job, and you're already preempting it. But then when you're not working, you're suddenly like,
Yeah, and that's such a thing. Like, you book a job and there's the excitement of that, and you're doing the job. But then so many of us as actors, quite quickly, even if there's like 3 or 4 months left of a shoot or of a play, your head immediately goes to, okay, right, I now have to book another job. I have to book another job, and I've been trying to, any job I've now done since Potter is like, just be present and enjoy working and enjoy the process of creating this character and telling the story, because the opportunities can sometimes be few and far between. And there was a pandemic coming at that point, and none of us knew that was coming, obviously. And we get so much satisfaction from the moments we are on set or we are in a rehearsal room, because it's us doing what we love. Just give into it and allow yourself to be present and not be fearful of, okay, I've got to book another job, because then it just, the whole work situation, or the whole craft just becomes one big ball of anxiety, and that's not why we do it.
Yeah, I mean I remember that whole period that we were all of us from the cast of The War Below were like kind of in communication while the pandemic was kind of kicking off, and we were all a bit apprehensive, thinking, oh, and then I was like, well, I'm going to do a podcast. Keep me busy. Like,
good luck, everyone else. I'm off to make a podcast.
I was like, I can't take it. I was only like 3 weeks into the thing. I was like,
Yeah.
But like everyone finds their own kind of things that will keep them sane, like whether it be going to the gym or like writing a script or whatever it may be. But that was hard. That was a hard period for everyone in and out of the film industry. That whole like it was 2-3 years of kind of the whole thing was upside down.
Totally.
And it was a matter of like trying to keep yourself sane and keep positive, because I know a lot of actors just threw in the towel in that time.
I mean, I think that also came from the financial pressures, because yes, you can earn good money, but if you do earn good money on one job, if you're then not working for like 8 months, yes, you might have a wad of money that comes in, for example, for a job, but then that's sometimes got to last you 6, 7, 8 months, sometimes a year, but beyond that, to try and get you through. And then or finding other work on the side or another side hustle, like you've obviously got with the podcast as well.
Well, I remember because I remember thinking, because we were both kind of like, oh, like I'm doing these auditions and I'm not getting anywhere and it's difficult and everything else. And I remember I got a job, and then I was like, oh God, I feel like we've been in it together, and I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, I got a job now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
So I didn't tell you, but then I stupidly put it on my story, and you were like, are you filming something? I was like, yeah.
I can't remember.
But then you obviously, I remember you got called in for Bridgerton for the spin-off, which you ended up obviously doing. But there's a story behind that, isn't there? Because it was a different role, wasn't it, that you went for originally? Now for a quick break. Are you a writer, director, actor, costume designer, perhaps makeup artist? Are you interested in camera? This is the place to share your journey. We want to hear from you. How did you start your career? Has it started yet? And perhaps, if you're feeling brave, share with us your most embarrassing film-related moment. So slip into our DMs at Life in Film Pod on Instagram. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Life in Film, where you'll get episodes early and uncut, amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching Elliot James Langridge Life in Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9 to 5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. And back to the show.
I read for Bridgerton, series 1 back in 2019, shortly after getting back from Broadway, and they saw me for Colin Bridgerton, and the casting director Kelly Valentine Henry. There was a really positive response, but it didn't work out. And ever since then, they've very, very kindly always brought me back in to read for other projects, but also so many other parts within this world. So I then read for another recurring role in season 2. And then off the back of that tape, they offered me, it was like 2 or 3 lines in an episode in series 2. And again, this was like maybe a third of the way through 2021, and that's coming off the back, still kind of in the pandemic. And I was like to my agent, yeah, but dude, I know we're not really going for, parts of this size, I suppose, coming off the back of Potter, but we're in a different world now. We're in a post-pandemic world, need to earn some money. I just think being back on set, work begets work, all that stuff. And he went, I really think of all of the worlds that you're auditioning for and that you get consistently brought back for, they really like you for leading parts in this. They can clearly see you in this. Let's not shoot ourselves in the foot too early. So I said no to it. And, you're saying no to a decent amount of money for, a couple of days work. And I found that very hard. And a lot of people were going, I really think you should consider doing it. I trusted my agent. And then at the end of 21, they then sent a tape for a Bridgerton spin-off, but they won't tell us about the part. It was a scene from Bridgerton, Daphne and Reggae shot in season 1, and everyone read for that. And that was obviously reading for the King, which our brilliant co-star Corey ended up booking. But then off the back of that, they got me to read for the part that I then subsequently got, Brimsley. So that's 4 or 5 times that I'd read for it. And I don't know, I think we can get really, as actors, we can get really feel put down by the audition process sometimes, because you send out these tapes and sometimes you hear nothing back, or sometimes positive feedback comes and a recall, or maybe not a recall for a part, but they go, but now try reading for this part. And you might do it over and over again and just feel like, well, I'm clearly not doing something right. I'm clearly the problem. And it's just remembering that actually, if you are being considered over and over again, it's because they like you. It's because it's not quite the right fit. And it's not just about, how good you do the audition and the scenes, or how good you are as an actor. There's so many other variables that come into it. And I'm saying this now, saying it to myself, because I'm reading for other stuff now. And it's so easy, even though I, done this amazing project last year, to forget that it's not personal. It's so much of it is trying to, and I know you've had so many casting directors that have sort of said the same thing on your podcast. It's all a process for everybody, and you're a small cog within the entirety of casting a particular show. And a friend of mine works in casting in LA, and she's like, it's a miracle when people get cast, because there is so many variables that come into it. So that whole process really taught me something as an actor, and my approach to taping for things and auditioning for things. And I think I have a much healthier approach now because of it.
I think that's a great story, though. I think for anyone listening to this that's sort of at the point where they're losing hope with something, then you just never know what's going to come from that. And like, I went through a period where I wouldn't audition for certain things, or I was like, it's not really for me, or I didn't want to do commercials anymore, or that kind of thing. But then stories like that make you realize you're auditioning at the end of the day for something, maybe the job that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
you don't know if you go in for that, they might see you as another part. They might go, actually, he's good for this project. He's good for something else. So now I feel like, and I don't know about if you feel the same, but I audition for pretty much everything now, because then I'm like, you don't know what's going to come from it. If you get the role that you don't want, then that's something that you talk about at that point when you get to that bridge. But before that, get seen by as many people as you can and do as well as you can in those auditions. I think that's got to be the way forward.
Absolutely. Because if you've got casting directors, they don't bring always loads and loads of people in for stuff. Sometimes they have to see lots of people, but a lot of the time they have select lists and want to try and cast off it. And if you're being seen, it's because you've already done the right thing in having a good show reel, or you've got some great headshots, whatever it is, or you've got a great list of credits, whatever it is, you've already done something right. And you are, I don't know, 30% of the way there, because you are ticking boxes that feel right for this part. So I think it's, unless you feel uncomfortable about something with a character, I think it's absolutely worth throwing your hat in the ring, because even if that job doesn't work out, they will, if you do a great job, remember you for stuff in the future. Like I read for a player of really established theatre in London only a couple of weeks ago, and it's a place that I really want to work, and I've only read there a few times and not recently, and they've got a whole new team coming in. And my agent was like, even if this doesn't go your way, it is still so worthwhile putting yourself on tape and going through this process, because you want to prove yourself to these people. And we got very close to it. It didn't work out, but they've come back and given positive feedback going, look, we really like him, and we're absolutely bearing in mind for anything that he could potentially fit into. And I think that's also part of this game. And that sometimes I understand that actors can find that exhausting, and it can be exhausting because you're doing a lot of work and not always getting paid for it. But it really does pay its dues down the line. And I remember, I think it was Bryan Cranston that gave the advice, and I'm obsessed with him. I really admire him as an actor and as a person. It's like, if you have the opportunity to self-tape or go in the room and audition, it's an opportunity for you. Treat it as you are going to work. You're going to work, you're doing your thing, you're proving to them, this is me being brilliant, this is what I've got to offer, this is how I see this character, and then walk away from it. And treating that every time as a job, as part of the work, as an opportunity to act and do what we love, and spend your few days doing the script breakdown and thinking about the character and letting your imagination run wild, and thinking about it like that makes the whole thing kind of more fulfilling, rather than just, I've got to do this to try and prove this, to try and get a job. Thinking about it as more than that has really, really helped me.
That's advice that I've heard from several very successful actors. It feels like a working formula. I mean, if there is such a thing, that does feel like something that's good.
I think it's so hard as well to find yourself in that place. And it's also, like I say, I'm auditioning stuff again now, and you get close to stuff and things don't work out, and you can feel a bit down in the dumps about it, and sort of go, well, what's the point? Because it is frustrating. You put your heart and soul into something and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. But that's part of the job. And I say to myself and also friends of mine, take a minute, feel crap, be annoyed, but then something else inevitably comes around, and you've got another exciting self-tape that's come in. And then you get excited about that, and you put all your eggs in that basket. So I think it's good to be annoyed and feel what you need to feel, because it's important to let go of it, but then you can move on.
Not so Bridgerton, but what was the title of the new?
How dare you? You should know the title.
Something.
Queen Charlotte.
Queen Charlotte. I've got it written down here, but I didn't look at it.
Did you just say Queen Charlotte?
Queen Charlotte.
Queen Charlotte. Queen Onion.
It's all right. We're mates, so I can get away with this. If I'd done that with someone I didn't know, I would be mortified, and it would be another embarrassing moment to share.
Yeah. Well, you can tell someone in your next podcast, I got my friend's story wrong, and he flipped his lid and he won't speak to me ever again. Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story is the show.
So Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. How was that experience? And it's out there now. So how I mean, getting that job, as you say, like it was around a period where there was a lot of shit going on with COVID and everything else, and you got this job, and I remember the excitement at the time of being like, this is going to be really good. I think this is going to be a great thing for me. That job, how did it turn out? What was the experience like, and going on set and doing that? And following that, people know what Bridgeton is, so there's a lot of expectation with this one.
Totally. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying. with entering the Potterverse, I suppose. You know, I'm entering a world where there's already a huge fandom, I suppose, attached to it, and a lot of people that love these characters and see themselves on screen. So there is a pressure that comes to it, and I was really excited, but very overwhelmed because, you know, it's Shonda Rhimes. Anything that Shonda Rhimes does it's hugely successful. She's absolutely brilliant at what she does. So, but the whole experience, I didn't know what to expect at the time because, again, the cast of Bridgerton is so big, and that's lovely. But when I got into the read through, I was like, this is actually a really small group of actors, and it's a really intimate leading cast. And because of that, we all really bonded, and we've become really close friends. We set up WhatsApp groups, chats, and all that. And because it's such a small cast and focuses on a small set of characters, the whole thing became very character driven. And the series is about adding flesh to the bones of these people that we love in Bridgerton already, and also meeting some new characters to, I think, enriching the fans' viewing of Bridgerton itself. And it was a really creative and collaborative experience, which our brilliant director Tom Verica created. Every day on set was a joy, and even if we were, you know, tight to the wire with trying to get a day's work done, everyone was still doing it with a smile on their face. We went to some of the most extraordinary locations in the UK, and I think it's really good. I mean, none of us, I think, expected it to turn out the way it did, because, you know, when you're doing something for so long, and I think we shot for just under 7 months, you start to lose focus because you shoot everything out of sequence. You start to lose focus of how it actually might look. And when we saw episodes 1 and 2, and then eventually all the way through to 6, realize how it is very much attached to the Bridgerton world, but it's its own standalone thing. It's got a different tone. It's very funny. It's even funnier than we expected it to be, and really charming and incredibly moving. So yeah, I'm really proud of it, and I hope people love it as much as we do.
Lovely, jubbly, mate. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I know Kate, you'll be watching it. She absolutely loves Bridgerton.
It is such a multifaceted character. All of these characters that Shonda has created, there's so many layers to them. So I'm nervous going into any project ever. And because it's a new project, it's new people, it's a new story, and I wanted to do a good job. So, and I didn't approach things any differently. I do all the research that I needed to do in terms of the time periods. And every day we turned up on set, it was a case of, okay, we will find the truth of this particular moment.
I love it. I'm glad that it sounds like a really good character, and from what I've seen, you've done a very good job. So I look forward to it, my darling.
Hey, I'm Kevin Bacon. It's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I'm Kevin Bacon.
Are you familiar with this game?
No.
So everyone, well, apparently everyone, not even everyone in the film industry, but everyone is within 6 degrees of separation to Kevin Bacon. Everyone's connected in some way, right? I've got one connection, and mine's pretty cool, Gary Oldman. So he did a film with Kevin Bacon. So I'm 1 degree. Is that 1 degree? No, 1 degree would be if I'd worked with Kevin Bacon, I think. So I'm 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Do you have any idea how many degrees, or how you are, in fact, connected to Kevin Bacon?
I'm guessing you do. You have an idea.
I've got it here, baby.
Let me think. I mean, Kevin Bacon had the most illustrious career. It's extraordinary. I have absolutely no idea. Well, actually, hang on. I know one that you won't have in front of you.
Yeah.
My flatmate in London, because he was in the show in Harry Potter with us on Broadway. He walked past Kevin Bacon in Soho in New York, which is where he was, and he was like, "I love Kevin Bacon." And he never does this. He never goes up to people and says, "I just think you're awesome." But he was like, "I've got to go and say something to Kevin Bacon. God, I think you're brilliant. You're in front of me. That's mental. I want to say you're brilliant." And he was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And then they went about their day. So I have that connection because I know Alex really well, and he's met him. passing in the street. But what's
That's
the
very
official?
good. That's very good because that won't be on the internet anywhere. Well, I hope
No,
not.
no.
Did you see that whole thing with Kevin Bacon where someone told him there was still, it wasn't Footloose, but it was one of the films he did in the 80s. And in the underground in New York, there was still a poster that hadn't been taken down from like 1989 of the film. I
No.
can't remember what the film was. And so Kevin Bacon went down there and obviously filmed it. And he was looking around, and apparently it had just been taken down like the week before he went there. It'd been there like fucking 30 years or something, and then he missed it by like a couple of days. But it was a really funny video because he's going down to the underground. Someone's obviously filming it that he's with, and he goes up to the kind of, you know, the train guard or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just wondering. I heard that there was an old poster from the 1980s that's still up on the." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, no, that went last week. Who are you?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm an actor. My name's Kevin Bacon. I'm an actor." And like, out of everyone in New York, I'm sure that was the only woman that didn't know who he
Oh
was.
my God. That must be such like people that are that famous and that well known must be so humbling for them in their moments, being like,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
great. That's
There was a brilliant one with J-Lo as well. She goes back to her old house, the one that
Right.
she sings about in like her song. And and she walks past the house and she's like, "Used to live there." And the person that's like living there now is standing at the step and they're like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm the person that used to live here." And
Oh, I've seen this video. I've seen
Yeah.
this video. I've seen this video.
Yeah. And he's like, "Well, who are you?" And she's like, "I'm J-Lo." And he's like, "Who?" She's just like, "Oh my
Again,
God."
go back to my point. If you're not in a soap, no one knows who you are.
No, they don't give a shit, mate. Oh God. If it was EastEnders, he would know.
Hey, straight
Okay.
up.
So let's have a look. So it goes yourself. Then the movie you were in, Cherry, the Russo brothers, for anyone that's asking. Then Daniel R. Hill. Do you know him? He was in Cherry. Who knows what part he had in Cherry? That was a big film with a lot of people in it.
Well, to be fair, that film was basically shot in 5 acts, and if you weren't in like the 3rd act with us in Morocco where we shot it for the war section, not a clue, no
Yeah.
chance.
No, I mean, I'm quite good with names, and I'm probably going to look this person up, and it'll be like Kevin Bacon or someone, but I don't know who that, I don't know who that is. He was in a movie called Dark Waters with a woman called Marcia Dangerfield, great name.
Oh,
She was
great.
in Footloose. So that is, you're 3 degrees. 3 degrees from Kevin Bacon, or 2 degrees if you count your friend who saw him on the subway.
So we're on the fence of 2-3.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good one. It's a good one.
That's very fun. Is it like an app that you have to type someone's name in and it goes? And what's it
Yeah,
about?
it's called Oracle of Bacon, and you can type in anyone's name as long as they're. I think you have to be on IMDb. You have to have been in something. I don't think because it doesn't seem to work with like casting directors, producers. So you have to be an actor of some sort.
Gotcha.
But even if you're like an actor from Bognor who's done one short film, it will find the connection.
That's wild.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
mad.
funny.
And it'll always be within 6, which is crazy.
So funny.
My aim is to try and get closer and closer and closer until I get Kevin Bacon on here.
And is that when you
that'd be the
go,
dream.
I peaked and I'm stopping?
Yeah, then I'm like, I retire from podcasting. But that's the aim. That is the aim.
Very good.
Anyway, back to you, Sam.
Most embarrassing moments, yeah.
I want to ask you, now that I've already made you tell your nosebleed story, I'm wondering, have you got another embarrassing moment that can possibly top that one?
Another embarrassing moment that can top it. I don't think I've ever felt, because it was so obvious what was happening, there was no hiding it. So I think that's probably the most embarrassed I've been on stage.
Just it could be anything. Not even on set, not to do with the film. It could be an audition, or it could be you just shit yourself. On a train.
I have a really embarrassing audition story.
Oh yeah,
oh god, I still think about it now and it makes me feel sick. Oh God. So I had just I was still doing Potter at the time in London. So this would have been 2000, beginning of 2017. God, I remember it so well. And I'd signed with some American agents at the time, and I flew out and I was getting like a big introduction to them on a week off that I had from the show. I was in New York and I was in LA, and they'd slowly started to get me reading for stuff in America. Um, and then the day I was flying in, they'd managed to get me straight into the recall stage for a particular film, which was Ari Aster's Hereditary. Don't know if you've seen it.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely horrendous film, in the greatest possible way.
I haven't seen it because I think it would bring up so much anxiety watching it. I haven't got it in me to watch that particular film of his. Anyway, so I went in and I landed. Let's start from it. I landed at midday and it was hissing it down in New York. It was a really, really horrible day. I got through border control. I got into the city. I just about found my Airbnb. I dropped my stuff off and I was like, hey to the guy because I was only renting a room off of him. It's like, right, I need to how do I get downtown to wherever the address was? Because I was going to pick up the scripts from my agents because I was like, I haven't quite got the lines down. I need to try and finish learning them. And then I got to my agent's offices. I picked them up. I was like, yeah, thank you so much. I think I was like, then I was going down to meet with the casting director and Ari Aster. And I got there. I was in the waiting room and I was like, God, I really don't know these lines very well. Oh, God. And I was so nervous. Bearing in mind, I hadn't been in an audition room for way over a year because I was doing Potter. I couldn't do anything.
Also, you just got off a plane,
And I just got off a
and you
plane,
must have been knackered as well.
jet lagged, and also didn't I had not been introduced to like the American side of casting and all that stuff. Not that it differs immensely, but it felt so new to me. It felt so alien at the time. And I walked in, our palms were sweating. I was like, hi, everyone, hi, hi. I read the first scene and I couldn't remember the dialogue. I was fumbling with my pages, trying to find where I was, trying to pretend like I knew it, and I didn't. My accent was I was from every part of America and Kent. I mean, I was all over the place. And I read the scene and I felt like he gave me the benefit of the doubt and gave me a note. And he was like, just dig a bit deeper with these moments. You know, this is highly traumatic. And the scenes were intense, like really intense. So I was like, yes, no, not a problem, not a problem. Started it again. It was as bad, if not worse, than the first time. I was doing some artificial, like, I'm emotional. I mean, it was so bad. And then afterwards, they were like, thank you for coming in. Didn't read the second scene. I could feel that they all felt really bad for me. I was humiliated. I walked out with the biggest sweat patches you could possibly see on anybody and went, well, there goes my career in America. Never forgot that audition since. That's without a doubt one of the worst I've had. So bad.
That's beautiful. Thank you for bringing
So,
us
so
into
bad.
your
And
nightmare.
if the casting director or Ari Aster happens to be listening to this, I don't know if you remember it, but I apologize for wasting your time.
That's it. I'm going to get them on here now and ask them if they remember.
And you'll ask them, it's like, Phil?
Who? Yeah. Oh man, that makes me think of a time I auditioned for what's that film where Leonardo DiCaprio gets sexually assaulted by a bear? What's it called?
The Revenant.
Revenant. That's it. I auditioned for that. That I auditioned for that, and I had a couple. I went in like 3 times. First couple went well. Bearing in mind, it's the same scene. I think it was for Will Poulter's part. And so by the 3rd time, I should know the fucking lines, which I did. I knew them backwards. This is like 2 weeks after the first audition. And I go in and I won't name names. I mean, people can look up who the casting director is. But this was a while ago. I was with Curtis Brown and they'd taken me in and I went in for this. And this is the second callback. So I'm thinking, I've obviously got very nervous because I'm thinking, oh shit, like, I've actually done these tapes all right, and this is for a big film. At the time, I knew it was going to be Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio and all this stuff. And I just fell to pieces in front of this casting director. And this was the American casting director. She very intimidating. And I could not string a sentence together. And every time I went slightly wrong, she'd be like, start again. start again. And she was doing that. So every time she did that, it made it worse. I was just there like, well, at least let me get a fucking line out. Like, I couldn't get past the first line. It was awful. And then she turned to me and she was like, who's your agent? I was like, Curtis Brown. She's like, she's like, how did you get them? And I was just there like, I don't know. She's like, you can go now. And I was just there like completely crestfallen. Just like, and by that point it was too late for me to be like, I'm dyslexic, help me. Like, I can't read.
Oh, that's horrendous.
But like, yeah, it was very cutting. And I've never forgotten it. And I don't think she has, because I don't think I've been seen by her since. So that was fun.
Listen, we've all got stories like that, and even the biggest stars have gone on the Graham Norton show and told their worst audition stories. And I don't know, we learn from them, and we all hope that the people that had to sit through our debilitating failure at the time can eventually see past it. Yeah. Hey, I stand by something I stand by in my life is we all have to be able to fail, because without failing, you won't succeed. And it's them moments, as bad and as humiliating and embarrassing as they are, they really do shape who we are as people and as artists. So I stand by that. It's as awful at the time as it is. We're never perfect. We're only human and we mess up. And it's not ideal to mess up when you're meeting, a director and producers and stuff that have taken time out of their day and you've done all the rounds, but it happens. It happens. And things are forgotten. They just get forgotten about eventually.
I think that's a good positive note to end on. All right, mate. Well, yeah, no, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And then, actually coming back and re-recording a whole episode. I'm sure we talked about a lot of the things we talked about before. Yeah. But I remember none of it.
We probably articulated things a lot better now that we're a bit.
Well, I hope so. That's the hope. That's the hope. I'll watch them side by side and think, oh, actually, no, the first one was better. No, definitely. And it was nice it's kind of funny recording something 2 years ago and the headspace that we were both in then during the pandemic, like end of the pandemic. And then coming now, you've got this beautiful job, and it's like talking about it, and it's all really positive. So I've just enjoyed that as well. So, thanks for coming on and doing it a second time over. So
absolutely, it's lovely to see you, mate.
Darling.
All right, mate. Have a lovely day. I've got to go and send some tapes off.
All right, mate. Good luck.
Enjoy. All right, mate.
Bye.
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 It's a Life in Film, motherfucker. Subscribe and like and follow.
Thank you to our guest, Sam.